It's funny because Atlassian really loves hackathons, and it's such a core success driver for us, especially in the early days, in part because we would do a lot of hackathons that were cross-departmental, and you'd get more technical people. You get a marketing person with an idea and a support person who was interested in that same kind of category, and maybe an engineer and an IT person, and they would all work together, and it would both build relationships. It would build the actual hackathon thing, but then it also built these relationships that led people to have collaborators in their ongoing ideas. So I can see how this like ongoing hackathon would give your employees a chance to like be like, I kind of have this idea, but I can't take it all the way by myself. Are there people I can talk to either at this time or, on an ongoing basis because we've started to form these relationships. So I guess I couldn't
Yeah.
endorse hackathons more for all sorts of things.
Well, and
Are you planning an agent hackathon? Like now the whole company got
we
agent
will have an agent
functionality.
hackathon as well too. Yeah. I want to add one other thing with the hackathons too, which is um the challenge I think your average employee faces in AI adoption is that you've got metrics to hit, goals to drive, and they have a way of doing things, and they're good at that way of doing things. And so there's a little bit of like tunnel vision going on. And so it is beneficial to you to kind of like create some space for them to be like, no, I need you to just go put your hands on the keyboard and go mess around with this stuff and learn. And you get what you just found, which is that once they do, they get excited, they get it energized. It's not that they aren't into this; they actually are excited. It's just they need a little space, they need a little bit of that to go make it happen. And so that I think is really important. But yeah, agent hackathons, 100%. We're gonna go do a lot of these.
Well, and I would say over the last 6 months, as I've gotten deeper and deeper and deeper into AI, it seems to me that there's really this slow down to speed up aspect.
Mhm.
When ChatGPT came out, you were like, give me a marketing plan or, what should the strategy be? And now we can see these people that are including prompts with, dozens of documents, hundreds of lines. I was following one of the Anthropic technical folks who said when she's optimizing the LLM, she goes back and forth 100 times. And like I used to get frustrated in the beginning when you went back and forth 4 times, and now as I'm seeing people build these like more complex AI automations, a lot of it is documenting things that haven't been documented in the company. Like exactly what is the best case process and like what kinds of exact answers do we want in what format. Um, do you see that same thing happening with the agents? It's really kind of like a slow down to speed up aspect because what you put in is so critical then to letting it do its work speedily on the back end.
Yeah, my co-founder Brian had this comment he actually made yesterday where, we were debating this around like particular AI effort we're working on where, folks are like, okay, we're gonna have to like this is gonna come in at a cost of this other thing. And he was like, folks are gonna have to get comfortable with this idea that you actually do kind of have to put 2x the work into this stuff, but you get like 10x the output. You get 100x the output on the other side. And so that's like a weird way to think about it. Is like, hey, there's a level of polish and rigor and attention to detail here that is really important. If you put it in, you're going to get outsized returns on the other side. And so I definitely think that is very much true. And the folks that are getting stuck are kind of getting stuck with what you said, where you're like, oh, I kind of put a basic prompt in and it kind of gave me a basic answer. I don't really see the value, so I'm going to move on. And it's like, well, you gotta develop some fluency with this. You gotta have a deftness with these tools, and that just comes from trial and error. It comes from sitting beside somebody who's done some of this stuff and going, "Oh, I didn't realize you had to do that, 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 that." You are on a whole other level than I am.
Yeah, it just takes a lot more upfront. So
Yep.
tell us then, as you've rolled out, how are training the agents, how is training your agents going to be different than setting up your Zaps and your process? I think agents, of course, aren't deterministic. But talk us through how people should try to think about approaching their agent projects in a more complex way than just their automated processes.
Yeah, I think the main advice I have here is human in the loop steps. So you're going to want to break these things down. We talked about that already. But as you're doing testing, you're gonna want to have a verification step, especially early on. And so there's a few ways you can do this. We have our Slack approval steps that work. You can also like have it create a Gmail draft for you instead of send the email. You can have it like log a thing inside of a Zapier table or a Google spreadsheet, and then you can go review it in there and then like flip a field to be like, okay, I've approved this, go ahead. And so I think that's going to be really important to help build that trust. Now, over time, as you start to see this thing perform more consistently in the way you want, then I think you're going to be able to start to remove those verification stats, certain places, and say like, okay, I trust this. This is not making the level of mistakes. Longer term, I think what we're going to eventually see is what I would call like statistical quality control. In the past, this idea of quality control has kind of been like a side thing in most software companies. But I think it's actually going to come really, really critical in the same way that like Toyota ran the field on American manufacturers in the 80s by getting really good at quality control. I think you're going to see the same thing happen with agents, where you're going to implement like statistical process control standards to help you really verify, hey, are these things working consistently or not? When your sample is not verified, you're going to shut the whole thing down. You're going to revamp it, and then you're going to go. But I think we're a bit of a ways from that. That's going to be really important, I think, for enterprise that are trying to deploy these agents doing millions and millions of tasks every single day.
Are you still seeing a lot of hallucinations? Because to your point, I think there's multiple problems that you would encounter in quality control, but certainly hallucinations is one of them that we know about.
Yeah, the models are getting a lot better at this, especially the reasoning models. This would be like, OpenAI has like the O1 series or the O3 series. These reasoning models just behave differently than the pre-trained ones, and so there's less hallucination with them. The second thing that helps with the hallucination is this thing we've been talking about: break it down into smaller tasks. That said, you're still going to have hallucinations. You're still going to have it make up stuff. And you're going to have to find ways to like verify some of these things. Um, at the end of the day. And so that's where you're going to want to have some sort of baked in quality control mechanism. And you're going to probably have to define like what your fault tolerance is for some of those things. Just as you would like, if you delegate something to an employee, you're not expecting that employee to be 100% accurate, but you're expecting them to be like pretty accurate. But you're not going to fire them the first time they make a mistake. You're going to go, oh, actually, like, hey, you made a mistake on this. Let me show you how to do a better job with it over time. And your agents are going to have some of those same characteristics.